So with the World Cup just over 2 weeks away and every single nation having put out their 26-man squad for the tournament, today I'm going to go over the biggest players to miss out. Now, this isn't the biggest players who are injured or whose countries didn't qualify. I'm talking about the guys who were simply not favoured by their managers. The best players, the biggest stars who weren't favoured by their managers, not because of injury, like I said, simply because maybe their form wasn't good enough. And hey man, there's some shockers in there, I'm not gonna lie. But let's start off with, for me, the biggest surprise in there, and that's Chelsea's Joao Pedro. Now, when it comes to Joao Pedro, obviously he had a great statistical season at Chelsea. I'm pretty sure, what was it in the Prem? Was it 15 goals, 5 assists? He got 20 goals in all competitions, but unfortunately he has not made Carlo Ancelotti's 26-man squad, which for me was a big surprise. I just assumed that he was just gonna be there because I was thinking about it. I was like, yo, you know, normally at former tournaments they took guys like Richarlison, but Richarlison for Spurs, he hasn't been performing. So I was just thinking, yo, Joao Pedro, when I think of number 9s for Brazil or who can play up there, I was thinking, yeah, no brainer, you know what I'm saying? I was thinking him, Endrick. But yeah, Joao Pedro has to be there, you know, no brainer. But no, Carlo Ancelotti has said, nah, Joao Pedro, you're not coming to the World Cup. Which, like I said, is very strange, considering that, you know, Ancelotti, he's taking players like Gabriel Martinelli, who's only a bit part player for Arsenal. He's taken guys like Enrique, even Igor Thiago. Igor Thiago's been in top form, but I would still, you know, I'd still assume that, you know, Ancelotti thinks that Joao Pedro is the better player. Thiago should go, you know what I'm saying? Thiago should go, but guys like Martinelli, Enrique, even the young boy who signed for Bournemouth in January, Ryan, he's a good player, but he even got the nod over Joao Pedro, which is very confusing, considering that in moments this season, in patches this season, Joao Pedro has looked a cut above his Chelsea teammates, you know what I'm saying? That hat-trick at Aston Villa, for me, very special. It was a very special performance from Joao Pedro. And now I know he's devastated, you know what I'm saying? I know he's devastated because me personally, if I had been in the form that Joao Pedro was in, you know, I'd had the season that I've had, you know, and I'm looking at my competition in terms of attacking places in the Brazil squad, I'm thinking, how have I not gotten into this Brazil squad? You know what I'm saying? How am I not on the plane to the USA? Apparently, hey man, I'm hearing rumors that apparently, you know, Joao Pedro was supposedly the sacrificial lamb for Neymar to get in the squad, which is a shame because, you know, obviously we all want to see Neymar at this World Cup. We all want to see Neymar at this World Cup. We all kind of understand that, yo, this is sort of Neymar's last dance, our last chance to see Neymar on the big stage, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, for Joao Pedro to miss out, it's a shame in my opinion, considering that for me, he's had a better season than some of the guys going. Guys like, you know, Enrique and Gabriel Martinelli. But Joao Pedro, he is the first big omission from the Brazil squad. Ancelotti didn't really give too much. He simply just said that, yo, a different player was favoured over Joao Pedro. Didn't really give too much tactical breakdown, tactical analysis of what he was, you know what I'm saying, what he was thinking, what the thought process was behind it. But Carlo has literally just said, yo, I just took a different player. I just preferred somebody else. I just prefer the attackers that I've chosen. I just prefer them over Joao Pedro, which is a shame because, like I said, Joao Pedro, he had a great statistical season for Chelsea, great performances, and I just think overall he's been a great player since his Brighton days. But that's unfortunate. But let's move on to England. I'm not going to spend too much time because I already talked about some of these guys in my England video. If you haven't watched that, go watch that. But I wanted to just talk about Foden and Palmer. There's been a lot of conversation around Foden and Cole Palmer. But for me personally, I just think it was the right decision, you know what I'm saying? And this is me talking as a Man City fan in terms of Phil Foden. He just hasn't been good enough in the last 18 months, in my opinion. You know, Cherky's come in, Cherky took his place in the 11. Semenyo came in, Semenyo took his place in the 11. You know, Doku's play has elevated. Foden simply just hasn't done enough to justify a position in this England team, you know what I'm saying? I remember Gary Neville, what was it? I think it was like a year ago that he was saying that, yo, Phil Foden's one of them players alongside Harry Kane where no matter what type of form he is going into the tournament, you have to take him. For me personally, I have to disagree. You know what I'm saying? I don't think Foden has done enough in the game. He has the trophies. He has the accolades. He's been a part of great teams. But in terms of just individual performances, carrying a team, like the way Harry Kane did those Tottenham teams, like the way Harry Kane is pretty much Bayern Munich's main man, he just doesn't have that license like a Harry Kane. He hasn't done that much in the game in terms of an individual perspective to be in that bracket. You know, he got a lot of criticism for that take, and I think it was justified. To say that is crazy, you know what I'm saying? You think of all nations around the world, who really has that status in the game to be like, yo, no matter what form I'm in going into a tournament, you're picking me if I'm fit. Messi, Ronaldo at this current moment, Neymar, probably Mbappe. Who else? Not many, you know, not many at all. Like from the top of my head, maybe Lamine Yamal for Spain. If he's fit, you know, no matter what his form is, he gets picked as well. But to be fair, not a lot of players in world football can say that. Harry Kane himself, I think Harry Kane's one of them. But Harry Kane himself, I don't think Phil Foden's in that bracket, you know what I'm saying? Same with Cole Palmer. Last 18 months just hasn't been good enough. He's been very, very off the boil. While Foden has, you know, he's been getting bench minutes, you know, microwave minutes, you know, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here. You know what I'm saying? Guardiola this season really favoured, you know what I'm saying, that three of Cherki, Semenyo and Doku. Cole Palmer, he's had his opportunities, you know what I'm saying? Cole Palmer's had his opportunities for the last 2 seasons, and he just simply hasn't done enough. He's got goals here, he's had performances here. He won Chelsea that Conference League, you know what I'm saying? Popped up with a big game in that Conference League final. You know, he's had games against Tottenham, but I just feel like ever since that first season, he's been sort of living off that credit in the bank. It's almost like he's not as hungry anymore. You know, it felt like in that first season he was hungry, he had something to prove. You know what I'm saying? City weren't, you know, giving him an opportunity. They were favouring the Fodens, the Grealishes over him. So he came in with a vengeance. You know, took on that responsibility as the main man. It was so impressive. But ever since then, it's almost like he himself has taken his foot off the ball. I don't even think it's bad performances. Sometimes I watch Cole Palmer and it's like, yo, he's just not doing enough. It's not that his passes are wayward or, you know, his shooting's erratic. It's just that he's just not doing enough in certain games. So I think leaving both of them out, especially with the likes of Morgan Rogers and Jude Bellingham in there, I just think it was the right decision. However, I do think a guy like Adam Wharton was unlucky to miss out, especially because he was there in the few England camps, you know what I'm saying, leading up to this decision. I just think he was unlucky. I think he's a great player. And like I said in my last video, I think he might, you know, suffer the way Michael Carrick suffered. Both same type of player, deep line playmakers, but I do think he'll get overlooked by, you know, the more dynamic athletic midfielders such as Declan Rice and Elliot Anderson and Jude Bellingham in years to come. But that was England. But now let's move over to France, man. The biggest one for France is probably Eduardo Camavinga, man. This guy was seen as the future for French football in terms of the midfield, you know what I'm saying? It was supposed to be him and Tchouaméni, the two-man step, especially after getting France to the final in the 2022 World Cup. However, it just hasn't been a great season for him or Real Madrid all round. And, you know, somebody was going to suffer in terms of, you know, their national team, the World Cup, because of this Real Madrid year. It hasn't been a great year for them. To be fair, a lot of them did make their national teams, you know, but including the French team, the likes of Mbappe and Tchouaméni still got picked. But ultimately, it was Camavinga. You know, Camavinga's form hasn't really been there this season. He's made appearances, I'm pretty sure it's 40 plus, but his overall performances haven't really, you know, been at the level that we expect a guy like Camavinga, a talent like Camavinga, to be at. You know, a guy like Tchouaméni's been asked to play different roles, and I think he's done well this season. You know, covering at centre back sometimes, covering, you know, playing that midfield role. Obviously, we know Mbappe, when he was fit, he was really firing this year, especially at the start of the season. Those numbers were ridiculous from Mbappe. And like I said, Mbappe is one of them guys in world football. No matter the form going into the tournament, he was going to get picked. But unfortunately, Camavinga misses out, man. And it was unfortunate that it was this year that, you know, Camavinga, you know, decided to have his worst season for Real Madrid, especially because a guy like Zaire Emery got a lot of minutes this year due to the injury of Fabian. So Zaire Emery, he took his chance. He showed the shops that, yo, I need to be here. You know what I'm saying? Zaire Emery probably had the best year of his young career so far. You know what I'm saying? Eduardo Camavinga, he lost out to a guy like Manu Kone as well. I can't really speak on Manu Kone. I don't watch a lot of Manu Kone, but I would assume that Camavinga is the more talented player. You know, Camavinga is the one who has more status in the game. He's done more at a higher level than Kone. But hey, man, he misses out, and he even misses out to N'Golo Kante, man, the old veteran, bro, 35-year-old Kante, making the France team, impressing Deschamps. You know, that's still Deschamps' guy. So unfortunately for Camavinga, he was meant to be the future. He was meant to be the guy, you know, him, Tchouaméni, Zaire Emery, they were meant to be the guys to take over from the Kante, from, you know, that Kante, Giroud era. But, hey, man, he misses out. But it'll be a batter in his back, and I'm sure he'll be ready for next year. Also, as well, Kolo Muani missed out. The man who missed that crucial chance in 2022. He was there in 2022. He was there in 24 also, but he misses out after a disastrous Tottenham season. Not here. It wasn't good by him, but again, with Camavinga, just the whole situation around his club as a whole wasn't really great, you know what I'm saying? Camavinga also wasn't helped by the red card at Bayern Munich. That pretty much cost Real Madrid the tie. But in terms of Kolo Muani, just hasn't been a great year. And the last French player I want to talk about is Paul Pogba, man. It was always an outside chance. It was always, you know, a fairy tale, but we wanted to see him one more time. You know what I'm saying? We wanted to see the Pogba Kante two-man step one more time. I needed to see that. You know what I'm saying? It feels like, you know, when them two played for France in that 2018 World Cup, you know, in at the friendly games, in the Nations League, even in Euro 2021, it just felt like they were unstoppable together. It felt like when them two were in the midfield together, you know, you couldn't beat that France team. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to see the Pogba Kante two-man step one more time. One of them held the end of the bargain. Kante, he held his end of the bargain well. But unfortunately for Pogba, injuries have limited his football since his return to Monaco. We all wanted to see Pogba do well, but the injuries are cooking him, to be honest. I'll be real. The injuries have just cooked him. He hasn't been able to get onto the pitch, shine like he once did. And yeah, it's unfortunate, man. We always see that Pogba Kante two-man step, but unfortunately injuries, it's not happening, unfortunately. But let's move over to Spain, man. Let's move over to Spain. Now, Spain, let's start with Alejandro Balde, man. Balde, he was injured at the start of the season. He's been suffering a lot of injuries, but even when Balde came back, he's lost sort of, you know, he's competing now with Joao Cancelo. Barcelona brought Joao Cancelo back, which means Balde's minutes have been limited, which is a shame because I think Balde, when he's fit, is a great option. He's quick, he can overlap, he's good on the ball, you know what I'm saying? Everybody sort of knows how good Balde is, but he's competing with an absolute technician there at Barca with Cancelo. And even if Cancelo wasn't there, it was going to be a tough task at left back to get into that Spain squad due to Marc Cucurella. You know what I'm saying? Marc Cucurella, the last 18 to 24 months, he's taken his game to another level. He's earned the reputation of being one of the best defensive fullbacks in the world. You know what I'm saying? One of the best 1v1 fullbacks in the world, probably behind a guy like Nuno Mendes. And also you have Alex Grimaldo for Bayer Leverkusen. We all know what type of technician Grimaldo is, you know. Can defend, can attack, set pieces. He can always be an asset for Spain. So Balde misses out. And then for the second World Cup in a row, no Real Madrid players in the Spanish squad, which is crazy if you think about it, which is crazy. Possibly the biggest club in Spain not having any Spanish players in the national team. It's kind of wild, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of wild. Imagine Man United having no English players at all, you know what I'm saying? No English players at all in the national team. It's kind of wild. But in terms of the Spanish players for Madrid, there was Carvajal missed out, Carreras missed out, and Dean Huijsen missed out. In terms of Carreras, let's keep it short. He was never getting in ahead of the two players that I just said, the Grimaldos and the Cucurella. So we could sort of skip him. In terms of Dani Carvajal, the man who was so crucial to Spain's success in that 2024 Euros win, the guy who was getting Ballon d'Or shouts. I remember guys were saying that, yo, Carvajal could potentially win the Ballon d'Or, or at least he needs to be top 3 in that year where, you know, it was the whole Rodri Vinicius thing. Guys were saying, yo, Carvajal should have a place on the podium in terms of the top 3 because he scored in the Champions League final and he helped Spain with Euro 2024 victory as well. But he's not in the squad, and it just seems like the Spain gaffer has just been like, yo, the cycle has to continue, you know what I'm saying? It's that time, you know what I'm saying? It's that time, you know what I'm saying? We respect what Carvajal's done. He's a veteran in the game, but it's just time to move on. Sometimes you can't do anything. Sometimes it's not your fault. It's just time to move on. He did have a big injury at the start of the season, but even when he did come back, he had to share the minutes with Trent, and it just feels like it's just that time in his career. Every footballer has to, you know, come to peace with that. Yo, I've had my time in the sun and it's just time to move on. It's just how it goes, you know what I'm saying? Trent at Real Madrid, it just seems like it's Trent Alexander-Arnold's time. And then with Spain, you have the likes of Pedro Porro, who in my opinion, brilliant player. Man City fan here, I said it before, I would be looking at signing Pedro Porro in the summer. and also Marcos Llorente, who's sort of a utility man. I think he's very, very good. You know what I'm saying? Can play in midfield, can play on the right wing if needed, can play at right back as well. I just think Carvajal, it's just time. It's been phased out. And then Dean Huijsen, great year at Bournemouth. Unfortunately, his great year at Bournemouth wasn't a tournament year. It was this year. He's really struggled at Real Madrid. He's a young player though, so I think he'll be fine for the future, you know what I'm saying? I think it's a case with Lenny Yoro at Man United as well. It's sort of similar situations where the talent is there, you know what I'm saying? You can see the talent is there. It just needs to be nurtured. And obviously, this is probably like the worst Real Madrid season in a while in terms of everything. If you take it into context, in terms of everything that happened, it's probably the worst Real Madrid season maybe of the 2020s to be the 2020s so far. So unfortunately for Dean Huijsen, he doesn't make it, but he was competing with guys like Kabasi, Merrick Laporte, even certain guys who didn't make it like Pau Torres and the likes of them type of guys. You know, Eric Garcia is in the Spain squad. You know, he's probably gonna play centre back as well. So yeah, he had stiff competition as well. But yeah, no Real Madrid players in the Spain squad for the second World Cup in a row. Next, I want to talk about Paulo Dybala, man. Paulo Dybala, in terms of the national team. How unfortunate, man. How unfortunate to have his sort of play style, but to be in the same generation as Lionel Messi. If only Paulo Dybala was like 5 to 7 years younger, he could have taken the throne from Messi, you know what I'm saying? When Messi started to slow down, it could have been Dybala's world for Argentina. He could have been the new one to come up, but the timelines just clashed too much, you know what I'm saying? Dybala really started coming onto the scene, I want to say like 2015, 2016, and at that point, Messi was like 27, 28 in his prime, you know what I'm saying? Dybala's like 21, Messi 28. Maybe if Dybala was, like I said, 5 years younger, he could have been able to take the throne. However, when it comes to Argentina and these, you know, big tournaments, he's never been able to establish a place in the 11 simply because they sort of see him as sort of like a B-Tech Messi, a watered down version of Messi, you know, left foot, likes to operate in the pockets, you know what I'm saying? Even when he had very, very impressive years with Juve, you know, 16, 17, getting Juve to the Champions League final, beating Barcelona and scoring a brace against Messi on his route to the final. 17-18, he had a very, very good year there as well. You know, the 2 years before Ronaldo came to Juventus, he was very, very good. But still at these major tournaments, you know, him and Messi in the same side, obviously systematically it just doesn't really work. Not his fault, not Messi's fault, it just is what it is. They're just two similar players. They occupy the same spaces, and yeah, it was never going to work. Sort of like Coutinho at Barca. Him and Messi wanted to operate in the same spaces. Coutinho was forced to be a wide player. Griezmann as well at Barca. Them two forced to be wide players. Wasn't really their natural game, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't really their natural game. They also like to operate in the half spaces, but you know, at Barcelona, that's all Messi, you know what I'm saying? Same with Argentina. Dybala, he's just unfortunate, you know what I'm saying? It's just an unfortunate case. Was there for the last tournament, came off the bench, you know, stopped that made a crucial tackle on Mbappe in like the last minute. I remember Mbappe weaved through like 2 or 3 guys. Dybala came in, made a tackle, scored in the penalty shootout. But unfortunately for Paulo Dybala, he's not gonna be there at this tournament for Argentina. And the last player I want to talk about is Karim Adeyemi, which surprised me when I saw his name not there. So really surprised me because, you know, I think he's a good player, offers a different dynamic, very, very dynamic winger, goes at his man. He's not afraid to, you know, he's not afraid to take risks, you know, would really provide that X factor for Germany. However, unfortunately, he hasn't been picked. Apparently, it's because, you know, apparently he's only played like 600 minutes since the turn of 2026. You know, the manager Kovac is just not having Adeyemi. He started the season quite well. I saw 6 goals, 3 assists, was playing well, started in, 16 games before the turn of the year, but since then it's been substitute appearances, and apparently he just hasn't been able to impress Niko Kovac in those substitute appearances. Niko Kovac came out and said, you know, Adeyemi is a nice guy, but he's not aggressive enough. He doesn't have enough malice in him, you know what I'm saying? That's what he's been saying. He says that Adeyemi lacks confidence, he lacks belief in himself, which for me was surprising because anytime I watch Adeyemi play, it's like, you know, he does not look like a winger that's, you know, let me take the ball, pass it backwards. I don't want to take my man 1v1. No, I've seen Adeyemi score goals like especially on the route to, you know, Dortmund's Champions League final run. I know that was 2 years ago, but I'm just saying what I've seen from Adeyemi, considering, you know, I'm not an avid Bundesliga watcher, but You know, scored the goal against Chelsea. Anytime I watch him in the Clasico, when I tune in, very, very dynamic player. And I thought that he would give this Germany team a different dynamic. This sort of reminds me of when Leroy Sané got left out of the 2018 Germany World Cup squad, and I was thinking, yo, I know this is different situations. Adeyemi, he's coming off probably his worst season in a while, whereas Leroy Sané had just won Young Player of the Year. What was it, 15 goals, 15 assists, something crazy like that in the Premier League, and he got left out, you know what I'm saying? He got left out, and it ended up costing Germany, because if you watch Germany in that World Cup, they just lacked an X factor, you know. Too many central players. It was Özil, it was Müller. There was no width. There was no someone to come in and change the game, give the opposition something different to think about. And I think that might be Germany's downfall in this World Cup as well. If you look at their squad, it's all very central players once again. And this is why I think I won't be surprised of another early exit for Germany. You know what I'm saying? I just won't be surprised. I don't know if they have enough firepower going forwards. And it's not like they have Arsenal's defence to compensate, you know what I'm saying? But they just don't have enough firepower, just not enough players who can take the ball, really go at their man. Florian Wirtz, Jamal Musiala, Kai Havertz, these Nick Voltemada, these are all very nice players, you know, want the ball to feet. But what happens when it's crunch time and you need goals? You know what I'm saying? You need a guy who can provide an X factor, who can either score goals or create a goal for somebody. I thought Karim Adeyemi was the guy for this tournament for Germany, just like I thought Leroy Sané was that guy for was supposed to be that guy for Germany in 2018. Ironically, Leroy Sané has got into this Germany squad, and I just think he's literally been picked because he is a winger, you know what I'm saying? I think Nagelsmann just looked at him and he was like, yo, I need at least one winger, you know what I'm saying? All right, let me just bring Sané from Turkey. I don't know how Sané's been doing. Like I said, Leroy Sané, as a Man City fan, he was amazing those first 3 years at Man City. Before he got the ACL, he was amazing. 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19. Ridiculous player Leroy Sané was. But he just, ever since that ACL injury, he just hasn't looked as explosive, hasn't hit the same heights, you know. I thought, you know, all right, cool, give him a year after the ACL. We'll see, you know what I'm saying? 2 years, all right, cool, third year. And it just hasn't happened for Leroy Sané at Bayern Munich or for Germany, to be honest. And it's a shame because Leroy Sané was looking like an absolute world beater, you know what I'm saying? He should really be. I thought, you know, the way we talk about these young wingers coming up, you know, the Yamals, the Doués, the Kvaratskhelia, he was really in that class, you know what I'm saying? In, you know, 2017, 2018, 2019, Sané was really in that class. He was meant to be, you know, up and coming. Him and Gnabry on the wings. For Germany, that was meant to be the two-man step, but unfortunately, it just did not work out like that for Sané. But yeah, those are the best players who got left out of their World Cup squads, not due to injury, not due to, you know, unforeseen circumstances, simply because their managers weren't rating them, didn't fancy them. And yes, unfortunately for these guys, but hopefully they can take this as motivation, get some rest, put in some extra work over the off-season, and yeah, have a great bounce-back season in 26-27. But yeah, I'm ready for this World Cup, man. Let's go.